I am thrilled to be standing among such an accomplished group of women representing so many more women across Virginia and actually nationwide in some of these representatives, that frankly, we value women's equality and we don't want to see women be forced into sameness with men through the Equal Rights Amendment. We see the harm that can result from the outdated thinking in the 1970s draft of the ERA. We embrace womanhood and all the advances that women have made since the 1970s and recognize that we don't need the ERA to be where we are today. I'm a third-generation opponent of the ERA, and I suspect my grandmother would not have envisioned that today I would still be battling her battle for her. But I think she'd be thrilled to see that I'm doing that as a representative who runs an organization, is a mom of 4, was able to get maternity leave, is able to work flexible hours. The point is, we don't have to be men in order to be able to make these advancements. And we're proud to be unique, and we embrace womanhood. Now, what I'd like to share today is that more than being legally invalid and unnecessary, points which a lot of folks are going to talk about this morning, I simply want to address with you that late in December, the Family Foundation commissioned a Mason-Dixon poll of Virginians, and contrary to what is being fed to our legislators, the moment that Virginians find out that this is more than a symbolic statement or a happy feeling about women, they reject it. The poll asked Virginia voters, quote, "The Equal Rights Amendment would likely create a U.S. constitutional provision ensuring taxpayer funding of abortion, as well as creating a legal foundation for abortion directly in the Constitution. Do you support or oppose the Virginia General Assembly taking action to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution?" When given the legal implications of the ERA, those that oppose it outnumber those who support it 47% to 42%, with some still learning about this issue. For those legislators, in particular, that wear a party label of Republican, they need to pay very close attention to this poll, as 79% of Republicans oppose the ERA in this survey. It is only when viewed in the abstract, without its concrete legal outcomes, that support ever exceeds opposition to this. And the reality is, Virginians are just now learning that this dead ratification process is being falsely resurrected and that there are significant legal implications. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to a whole bunch of ladies who want to share with you their opposition and what they represent, and I'm going to let them just introduce themselves, and then we'll circle back if anybody has any questions.
Good morning. My name is Ann Schlafly Corey. I'm the chairman of Eagle Forum, which was founded by my mother, Phyllis Schlafly, in the 1970s to oppose the Equal Rights Amendment. We're still opposed. It's still a bad amendment, and all the reasons why it was bad in the 1970s are true today, only more so. Because ERA does not put women in the Constitution, ERA puts sex in the Constitution. And sex has a lot of different definitions today than what it had in the 1970s. This would really give gender identity a constitutional right. It would make sex under strict scrutiny. It would upend countless laws across the country that today protect women. ERA would harm women. It would harm women by taking away all of the benefits and rights that women have today in sex segregation, including prisons, schools, school athletics and high school and college athletics, women's shelters, set-asides for women. This is a bad amendment that would harm women. Furthermore, Section 2 of the Equal Rights Amendment is a power grab by the federal government, and the states would lose all power in all kinds of sex-related laws, including family law. There is no reason to put this poorly worded amendment into the Constitution today without a full discussion and vetting by all Americans. The idea that a couple of states can tag on to votes that were taken 50 years ago is a fraud and a cheat on our constitutional system. Millions of women were inspired by my mother in the 1970s to get up, get out, organize, and defeat ERA, we're at it again today. Thank you very much.
I'm Tina Whittington. I'm the Executive Vice President of Students for Life of America, and we are the nation's largest youth pro-life organization in the country. And as a woman, as a mother, as a Virginia resident, and as a representative of our over 1,200 student groups across the country, I'm here today to urge our lawmakers to put the brakes on the Equal Rights Amendment here in Virginia. Let us not be the state that turns the clock back on women. By ratifying this out of date, out of sync, and frankly harmful to women amendment. The ERA is out of date. Not only have supporters failed twice with extended deadlines to get this amendment ratified by 38 states, our culture and our legislation has effectively moved past a time when an amendment like this is even needed. The ERA is out of sync with this century, where women are already protected as equals in our legislation and by the courts. We have passed legislation for equal pay, equal employment, pregnancy non-discrimination, Title IX rights for women on college campuses, and so much more. Even the Supreme Court has weighed in on women's equality in their 1971 ruling on Reed versus Reed, where the court decided that the 14th Amendment did prohibit unequal treatment on the basis of sex. This was the first U.S. Supreme Court decision to apply the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause to gender or sexual distinctions. We have an amendment that gives us equal protection. The ERA is harmful to women. This is an amendment that today would hurt the very women that supporters are saying it's going to help. If the ERA were to be ratified and enacted, gender-specific protections we now have would be ripped away because it would make illegal laws designed to benefit one gender. ERA specifically states that a person's sex could not be considered in making a legal preference. With that in mind, consider the many protections designed specifically for women, for mothers, that would be impacted and harmed, including the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act of 1972, the Federal Minimum Wage Act of 1974, and the Pregnancy Non-Discrimination Act of 1964. In fact, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote in her book Sex Bias in the U.S. Code that the ERA will change 800 federal laws, including the elimination of Social Security benefits for wives and widows. The financial impact on women is incalculable. I think the dirty little secret that we all know that that's the push for the ERA, and they don't want to talk about this. This is the hidden thing that they don't want to bring up front. But this is about creating a constitutional foothold for abortion. Yeah. Finding a right to abortion based on Equal Rights Amendment, based on this amendment, is not about the abortion procedure. The abortion procedure isn't even mentioned. It's not mentioned. It's about being a woman's ability to live equally. And we've already seen this fleshed out in Connecticut and New Mexico that have equal rights amendments in their state. The courts there ruled that restricting funds for medically necessary abortions does not apply the same standard of medical necessity to both men and women, thus making abortion in those states not only a right, but a procedure that the state must pay for. There is a fear. The people that are here trying to push the ERA, they're afraid. They're afraid that Roe is going to be overturned, that more states are going to pass legislation to protect the preborn and support women to choose life. And the only reason to pick the ERA back up off the dusty floor of history is because of a fierce desire to protect abortion at all costs. Betty Friedan, one of the founders of the modern pro-ERA movement, summed up their position best in her letter to the International Women's Year Conference delegates. She said, "The ERA has become both symbol and substance for the whole of the modern women's movement of equality. Further, I am convinced if we lose this struggle for the ERA, we will have little hope in our own lifetime of saving our right to abortion." That is still what it is about today, because we are already equal. We are already protected under law. Courts have already given us equality. The ERA is out of date, it's out of sync, and it's harmful to women. It is not truly the Equal Rights Amendment anymore. but the Everything Related to Abortion Act. Again, I urge our legislators not to turn the clock back on women, because that's what this will do, and to not turn their back on the most vulnerable among us, the preborn. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Toni Delancey. I am the State Director of the Concerned Women for America for Virginia, and I'm so happy to be here today with other like-minded groups and organizations in opposing the ERA. Concerned Women for America is the nation's largest public policy women's organization, and it has a rich history of helping our members across the country bring biblical principles into all levels of public policy. Concerned Women for America of Virginia is part of a grassroots of over 400 prayer and action chapters nationwide, working to promote God's values in our schools, our communities, and our state. That's why I'm here today. Once again, our values are under attack by this proposed legislation. Despite claims of protecting women's interests, ERA will actually end up hurting women, as you've heard. I'm going to focus on something that I know about personally: military service and what the ERA would mean for our nation's armed services. In the late 1980s, 8 years after the ERA failed, I graduated from the U.S. Military Academy. I was a young 18-year-old woman, and in 1991, I graduated from there with about 80 other women out of a class of 945. Graduation day, President George H.W. Bush personally handed my diploma to me, and I saluted him, our then Commander-in-Chief, and I was commissioned that day as an officer in the Army, and I went on to lead men and women in a tactical intelligence unit. Now, this was a privilege of a lifetime, but not just for a woman, for a man too. My women classmates and I, we didn't need the ERA to accomplish this. We volunteered and we competed for those slots to serve our country. We were able to contribute, thank you. We were able to contribute based upon our individual strengths and our unique abilities. Women today, we know they're pushing themselves further than ever. Some who are physically able are even Army Rangers and in combat roles. But these women enjoy the right to volunteer and compete by choice to do these remarkable things. The passage of the ERA would change this progress that women have already made, and it would force equal representation of women in all military roles, regardless of their abilities. This would be disastrous for military readiness, and it would place individuals in roles for which they're ill-suited. It would also put them in greater danger, and the people with them. If passed, a future war would require women to be drafted just as men. The current system works, and it provides equality for women. I am an example of this. The Bible tells us in Romans 12:6, in His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well, and each is to use their gift accordingly. The ERA is not needed for women to succeed. The ERA hurts women and would indeed hurt the armed forces. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mallory Quigley. I am a Virginia resident and new homeowner, and I'm here today on behalf of thousands of Susan B. Anthony List members here in Virginia. And for those of you that don't know, we're a national pro-life organization, and our mission is to elect pro-life leaders and then work with them to pass and enact life-saving law and policy. And we're very proud to be here with so many distinguished allies and coalition partners to strongly oppose this very misleadingly titled Equal Rights Amendment. This creates more problems than it purports to solve. As Tina quoted Betty Friedman earlier, both the supporters and opponents agree that as it is written, it would alter the Constitution to create a permanent right to abortion on demand up until the moment of birth, paid for by you and I, the American taxpayers. It's even more extreme than Roe versus Wade, which in a single day struck down every pro-life law nationwide. any concept of equal rights that leaves behind unborn children, including unborn girls, is, no matter how well intended it may be, is completely unacceptable. And feminist pioneers like Alice Paul and our namesake Susan B. Anthony saw abortion as even an exploitation of women, that it is anti-woman. And even Alice Paul, as the original co-author of the Equal Rights Amendment, she lamented that abortion was included, that her lifetime project was hijacked by the abortion lobby and completely derailed. And it's such a shame that her intention and desire to exclude abortion from the beginning was rejected. It's because we believe in equality for women that we cannot possibly support this amendment without the exclusion of abortion. It's a radical assault on the equal rights of unborn children, including unborn girls, as well as their mothers. And the abortion lobby does not speak for all women, as you can tell from this very crowded room of women. And women are actually more likely than men to support common sense, compassionate limits on abortion. For example, that 5-month abortion ban to stop abortion after the baby, a point by which we know the child can feel pain. So we urge the Virginia Assembly to get educated, to listen to these voices around me, and to look closely at the harm that this amendment would cause, and to, in its practice, no matter how it's written, and to vote no. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kelly McGinn. I'm here from Northern Virginia today to stand with my sisters to oppose this terrible, old, dead-on-arrival amendment, the ERA. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia Law School, and I'm here representing thousands of women in Virginia, millions across the country that recognize that this is a terrible, terrible idea for women. It's particularly ironic that in this 400th session of the Western Hemisphere's first representative assembly, that our General Assembly is taking up a bill that would transfer its authority over some of the most personal rights of Virginians, including marriage, divorce, family property law, adoptions, abortions, school, and sports from our state to the federal government. Section 2 of the ERA states that the Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. Congress and the federal courts will thus decide, not the people of Virginia or any other state, what sexual discrimination is, and this will mean an avalanche of lawsuits disrupting the lives of women in our state and across the country, who will no longer be able to rely on existing common sense laws to protect them when they're pregnant, if they suffer sexual abuse, when they're incarcerated, and even when they compete in sporting events. Now, the ERA may sound benign and symbolically important, but it failed in 1979 and ultimately in 1982 because people recognized its vague promises would not advance the cause of freedom and protections for women. This is even more true today, because Section 1 of the ERA does not even mention the word woman or women, referring only to equality of rights on account of sex, a term which enjoyed a common understanding in 1972, a man or a woman, but does not in 2019. And this would be going in our Constitution, a vague, undefined term. The whole point of a Constitution is it's a blueprint, right? It's a consensus of the governed. We cannot allow this to go forward. So it's inevitable that any person seeking to protect their rights, man or woman, under this amendment will need to seek the intervention of the courts and will not be able to rely on any laws that currently protect their existence as a man or a woman. It truly is a full employment act for lawyers. They will thank our assembly if this moves forward. Now, laws drafted specifically with women in mind that we all take for granted on issues like abortion, women's health, single-sex shelters for battered women, women's sports, accommodations for pregnant women, military service, and single-sex housing in prisons will likely be in jeopardy. The ERA is unnecessary in 2019. It's not 1972. Women are already well protected under the Constitution, and you've heard from my sisters. The 14th Amendment very clearly protects us. In fact, if you remember in 1996, VMI was integrated by U.S. versus Virginia in a case that very clearly maintained that women had every right that men had to access education. There are also a long list of other laws, the Equal Pay Act of '63, the Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act, Title 9, and others will list them off if they haven't already. Carefully crafted Virginia laws and regulations have also developed over the years to meet the specific needs of women. And all of these laws, federal and state, would be superseded by the ERA were it to become part of our Constitution, leaving women with less certainty of their actual rights under the law. The ERA, as currently written, is too extreme. It's bad for women, and women deserve better. Thanks for standing with me to oppose this.
Hi, I'm Alexandra McPhee. I'm the Director of Religious Freedom Advocacy at Family Research Council based out of Washington, D.C., and I'm here to speak to the fact that the ERA fails procedurally. It is legally moot and thus off the table for ratification. In 1972, when the amendment was first proposed by Congress, Congress itself conditioned ratification on a deadline, and that was March 22nd, 1979. And a later extension moved the date to June 30th, 1982. Proponents of the amendment failed to rally enough states to ratify the amendment in that time at either juncture, and in that time, 5 states have withdrawn their ratification. Now, 36 years later, proponents believe they can and should pass this amendment, but they cannot and they should not. Congress reasonably imposed a 7-year deadline when they first proposed this bill, and that's because they know that in 7 years, a lot can change, and even more so in a lifetime. The deadline was binding enough when the ERA thought it would win, but now that it's lost twice, the rules no longer apply. If Congress represents the will of the people, why ignore that? 2019 is not the time to undermine the will of the people of 1982, when the people of at least 15 states decided that the ERA should fail. And what ratifying states wanted in 1982 and earlier should not dictate the voice of the people of 2019. Assuming all of this, whatever the ERA proponents want to pass in the General Assembly here today will have to make its way through a new Congress with 2/3 of a vote. But based on a current makeup of Congress, the ERA will not garner the necessary votes. As a woman, the ERA does not support my interests, so I do not support the ERA. Nor should anyone find support in those who understand the negative consequences that will result if this amendment is ratified. I therefore urge the legislators to vote no.
Hello. I'm Patricia Mosley, the Director of Life, Culture, and Women's Advocacy at the Family Research Council based out of Washington, D.C., and I oppose the ERA. The reason is this is not really about women. Women are continually used as a prop to push an agenda. And the time's up on that. The ERA is really a smokescreen for abortion. Abortion has extinguished over 60 million children from our nation, and by design, our poor and minority communities have been disproportionately affected. The majority opinion of Roe, written by Justice Blackmun, is laced with eugenic ideology and has even been acknowledged by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who quotes saying, "I had thought Roe was about the population growth of those we don't want too many of." The abortion industry from day one has used the courts to force its agenda. Now that it seems that the courts may be stacked against them, they will use any back door or make a door and use any prop, even if it's women, to preserve abortion. Abortion lobbyists who fatten the wallets of legislators know that abortion has no actual constitutional basis and are convinced they need a constitutional amendment to keep abortion legal. While trying to protect abortion, the ERA leaves women unprotected by threatening legal distinctions based on sex. This puts men in women's shelters, prisons, bathrooms, showers, sports, and more. This is not the kind of equality I want. Now, the ERA has just undermined the already achieved protections designed specifically for women. But no worries, because today we act like we don't even know how to define what sex is. Now, if the ERA sincerely cared about protecting women, it would have seen it as necessary to define what it means to be a woman. It does not. The law has failed so many times because it is disingenuous and it has no moral compass. Therefore, it continues to trip over itself and produce more problems into other issue areas. The ERA is bad all the way around, and I urge all representatives in the Virginia legislature to vote no.
Yes.
Delightful to see all of you all here today. This has been a long trail. Good morning, and my name is Eva Scott. To many, I may best be known as the first woman elected to the Senate of Virginia in 1979. Before serving in the Virginia Senate, I also served in the House of Delegates for 8 years. As a member of the House of Delegates in the early 1970s and later as a state senator, I strongly opposed the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment and did for many years and still oppose it. And what we called it was the extra responsibilities for women in those days. I understood that while purporting to elevate women, its effects would have been to diminish womanhood and to promote abortion. And until we call abortion something else, that this wasn't encouraged me to say this, but until we call it what it is, killing babies, we're not going to do away with abortion.
That's right.
Now, nearly 50 years later, the ERA's language has not been changed, and its effects have actually worsened. Consider, in those nearly 50 years, all that women have been able to accomplish, and all without the Equal Rights Amendment.
Exactly.
My own life, alongside with countless others, is a testament to what women can accomplish in our society. I graduated from Longwood College and School of Pharmacy at MCV. I became a pharmacist and a business owner, and state delegate and senator, a wife and a mother of 5 children. Women today are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They make up the majority of those enrolled in college. They are Supreme Court justices. They frequently run for president in both major political parties and commonly serve as presidential cabinet secretaries. We currently have a woman Speaker of the House in the U.S. House of Representatives. These are just a few notable examples among countless accomplishments and opportunities. And none of that is meant to suggest that these positions are the pinnacle of success for a woman. Women everywhere in our country are busy living their lives, pursuing their dreams, raising their children, important, caring for their husbands and loved ones, serving in their churches and civic groups, and making profound impacts in every corner of our society. All of this has happened, and is happening every day without the so-called Equal Rights Amendment.
That's right.
By insisting on this hollow and deceptive amendment in order to accept their equality, women are really selling themselves short. All these women really need is to embrace the truth that equality is already theirs and the whole world is at their and our fingertips. Amen. Thank you all for being here.
I want you to stand beside me here. I just want to make I'm State Senator Amanda Chase. I represent Chesterfield, Colonial Heights, and Amelia. And I just want to make a note that this is my predecessor. I am the second state senator to serve the county in Amelia. And I, too, do not support the Equal Rights Amendment, which is no more affordable than they said that the Affordable Health Care Act was affordable. The Equal Rights Amendment is no more equal for women. And so I stand here in agreement with my mentor and my predecessor, the second female to serve Amelia County in the state of Virginia, the second. And do we have the ERA amendment to get us here? No, we didn't. We didn't need the ERA amendment. And so I wanted to make that note before I gave my remarks, and thank you for paving the way, being a trailblazer for the 11th. I just wanted to point out a case in point of the history that we already have in Virginia of strong, independent-minded, conservative women who have a strong voice and already represent women here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I want to recognize several of my colleagues who are female members in the House of Delegates. Delegate Byron, Kathy Byron. I also want to recognize my good friend behind me here, who's going to be introduced in a minute, Delegate Martha Ranson. What do you go by? Margaret Ranson. And you know, what an honor to be here. And Delegate Poki is here as well. Yes, good to see you. Sorry, I just stepped out of the Senate Health and Ed meeting, so I'm getting up to speed here. Listen, here's the big concern. First of all, I want to affirm women because women matter. And so I have submitted and sponsored, chief patroned a bill called the Equal Rights Affirmation because we want to affirm women. So that has been submitted, and you can go online and check that out. What we do not support is the Equal Rights Amendment because it is not for women. And we need to spread that message that people have, good, well-intended people have believed. When you hear Equal Rights Amendment, you think this is a good legislation. This I can get behind. I have spent the entire last session pulling together judges, pulling together former legislators who have poured through and read through every last public hearing from the late 70s and the early 80s when this was first introduced. And let me tell you, there are states that have gone ahead and approved the Equal Rights Amendment because they thought, I mean, the first time you hear it, it sounds good. But when you read the fine print, we read it is not for women. Why is it not for women? Because they do not define the term sex. And until you say female, I don't believe that you mean what you mean. And so there is no definition of sex. And I asked the question yesterday in Privileges and Elections. How do you define sex in this document, and why is it not written in the article? And until you change that word to female, then I cannot support this legislation. And so I have therefore reintroduced a real adjustment, a real bill that would actually promote and affirm women. And I encourage all my colleagues to sign on to this bill, which is truly for women. It's concerning to me that the ERA treats women identically to men, not equally to men, lending to it the current fad of gender fluidity. And I think that's a real concern. I don't feel like the intent of the sponsors is to create gender fluidity. I think they really mean well with this bill, but the unintended consequences is that it will hurt victims of domestic violence who are terrified to go into public bathrooms. If this law passes, you will no longer be able to go into American Family and allow yourself the privacy of getting a shower and being in a protected, safe environment where you can take a shower after your workout. Your college students who are going to whatever Virginia College, Virginia Tech is my alma mater, so go Hokies. What if your child's roommate, your daughter, is assigned to a male roommate because they can no longer discriminate between the sexes, between male and female? It will be illegal to do so, just as we would never do that with blacks and whites. We would never separate blacks and whites. And under the new law, it would create that same distinction. We could no longer separate the sexes, male and female. Think about that. I'm a mom of 4 teenage kids, and I'm offended by that. And as a woman, I won't stand for it, and I'm outraged that they would bring back the Equal Rights Amendment and disguise it in today's terminology as something that's for women. As a woman, I am tired of being used by the left as a pawn, and I reject it, I won't accept it, and I defy it right now. Thank you.
Good morning. Kathy, come over. Okay, we'll bring all the elected folks together. I'm Delegate Ranson. Okay, it's hard to follow that. That was quite ambitious there, Senator Chase.
Fired up.
Delegate Ranson. I'm the first elected woman from my district in the Northern Neck. So for years, this ERA amendment has come before my subcommittee, and we did not vote for it. We did not let that get out. I'm so excited to see so many dedicated women and committed women here to finally get behind this and help us fight against this ERA amendment. The organizations that have come out today and are standing out for the values and principles that we all hold dear is very important. I have never seen us come together so strong in all the time that I've been here, and it's been 7 years, and it is important. I want all of you to look around, and I want you to see the faces of those that are here. It's important. And you know what? You're going to notice that most of these faces are women. And what I already know about the women that are here is that you have the courage to stand up. You have the courage to be strong. You have the courage to stand up for what you believe in. And what we are told is that we have one issue that's important. One thing that's important to also know is that we are delegates, we're senators, we're professionals, we're mothers, we're daughters, and we're grandmothers. Women today, we're elected officials, we're civic leaders, we're military leaders. Where are the military leaders here? We're law enforcement, and we're community leaders. None of us needed a constitutional amendment to make that happen. None of us needed that to make us successful. Your support and your willingness to be here makes us different. Every woman in this Capitol who shares your values and understands the importance of you being here and the necessity of your strong and determinedness to be here to help us lead. Please don't be bashful. Do not be bashful. Do not be quiet. And please don't back down, because there is a force against us right now, and we need you to be here. It's important. United, there's nothing that we cannot handle. There's nothing that we cannot accomplish. And what's important now is that we continue to show the next generation. I'm raising 2 children. I'm raising a daughter. And I never look at her and tell her, there's nothing that you cannot do. I look at my daughter and I say, look what I've accomplished. No one ever stopped me. No one ever stopped me. You're smart. You're smart. You can make it happen. You can do anything that you want to do. And no one's ever going to stop you. We need to tell our young people this. Because one day you're going to grow up. You're going to be a mom. You might go into the military. You might fill one of our shoes here. But you're going to make it happen. And you won't need an amendment to do that. Yes. God bless all of you for coming out. God bless you.
And she can make America great again.
Yes. America is already great. So thank you all for coming out and standing with us. It means so much. It's been a long time coming to have this force behind all of us. And we needed it. Amen. It's spirited.
Good morning. My name is Kelsey Good. I am the Young Women for America National Coordinator at Concerned Women for America, and I'm standing here not only on the shoulders of all of these women, on the shoulders of Mrs. Cobb, but I'm standing here to speak for hundreds of our female students, high school and college students across the country. And honestly, I think my main point is that women are protected more now than they would be with the passing of the ERA. That's right. Like so many of us, I grew up in a home where I was taught and shown that women are strong, they're hardworking and intelligent. My mom has been a practicing attorney. She's had her own law firm for the past 15 years, and I grew up watching her be successful. I would never doubted for a second that I couldn't do what she did or more than what she did. I've been surrounded by women who have succeeded in all professions and occupations, putting forth a focus and determination to accomplish whatever they set to do and getting paid equal, if not more, than their male counterparts. Their achievements have been made possible with the protections of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and they have thrived without the assistance of the ERA. Women have destroyed glass ceilings. The roads have been paved for myself, the women of my generation, our Young Women for America, for you to succeed. We are standing on the shoulders of the women who have shattered these ceilings and who have opposed the ERA for so many decades. And quite frankly, passing the ERA would be turning back the clock for women. And the symbolism of the ERA is not reason enough to jeopardize the advancements that women have already made for the past 3 decades. We have raised the playing fields. We have passed significant legislation to protect women, and women have been making advances in all of these fields, and these would come and be challenged if the ERA was passed. Our Young Women for America ladies, your daughters and your granddaughters' protections on college campuses, their safety and their scholarships, their admission processes would all be brought into question with the ERA. And I think that is huge. This is something that's already been brought to courts. Men have been bringing court cases talking about that it's sexist against them, and that'll just grow more with passing the ERA. The issue today is not the absence of laws protecting women. Women do not need the ERA to succeed. The ERA will do more harm than good. And honestly, we can do better than this. Yes. So, thank you.
We're going to let our elected officials slip off to caucus, but we wanted to open up if you guys have questions, and if you have a specific person, give us a feel of who that would be that you'd like to answer your question. You guys. Oh, somebody get a picture? You okay?
Yeah. I'd just like to step forward. I'm Brenda Poki. I represent the 96th House District, and I'd like to say something that hasn't been said. I see members of the media here today, and I challenge you to print what these women are saying, because this is the truth. And the ERA may make a nice politically correct headline, but it is loaded with fine print, and you've heard us explain the fine print that is in it. Read it for yourself. I stand here in agreement with these women that I consider my sisters, and I am opposed and will oppose it in the General Assembly. And I know that others with me will as well, because we do know what's in it. And I challenge the public to read it for themselves, because this is bad legislation. And we need to make sure that we do not harm the societal fabric of our country, because the only winners in this ERA passage will be attorneys who will be engaged for years to come with litigation. This is an expansion of the nanny state. And if you want more scrutiny into your family and into your life, that is what you will get with the passage of the ERA. It only expands the overreach of the federal government into your individual lives and families. It's bad, and the reason it has not been passed all these 50 years is because words mean something. And so go back and read it, and please, members of the press, print what we are saying. Thank you very much.
I'll be brief. We've heard from some fantastic folks here, and I just want to thank you. I was elected 20 years ago, and I've seen a lot happen at the General Assembly, and you are an encouragement. Your testimonies matter. Some of the people that have been coming up to me lately are saying, please be a voice for us on the floor, because they don't represent the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we want to hear from you how the rest of the women in this Commonwealth believe, and they do not support the Equal Rights Amendment. And I assure you that none of them were there when I got elected 20 years ago to help me in my campaign. And just like many of the other strong women, I'm just totally blessed by what you said today. We will fight as hard as we can for you, and we need to. I have seen the last 5 years women, as it's been stated before, used as a pawn for so many issues down here, and the drama and the emotion that plays out with that is just totally ridiculous. And the rest of us have to just start speaking out, speak out in your community, and you're going to find there are a lot of people that are going to come out and say, thank you. And they're going to thank you for being that voice for them in the community. So once again, be fair to us. The media has been touting about all the other messages that are out there. And if you really want that credibility of being fair reporting, give us a fair shot for today. Thank you.